Chapter 33. A Little Golden Key. "How could you let her go?" King Harman shouted at Andor, clanging his staff on the marble floor. Behind him, Queen Chloe sat slumped in her throne, her head in her hands. "She told me to tell you that without the wolves she would not be alive today," said Andor, trying not to squirm. He'd seen Harman lose his temper with others, but never with him. "Didn't you tell her what you and I discussed last night? That these wolves, so clearly dangerous, would have to be put to death?" "I did, Your Majesty." "And?" "She said, 'I am the only one who can undo what Vilmos has done. I must try.' She said that if you were in her position, you'd do the same." "That's ridiculous. I'd never keep packs of bloodthirsty wolves alive." "I think she meant if you had been raised by wolves and owed them your life." "Yes, thank you. I'm not stupid," said the king. "I thought you agreed with me." "I did, and until I talked to Irina. She has a strong sense of honour, Your Majesty. You should be proud of her." "Don't presume to tell a king how to feel." Harman strode to the window. "I beg your pardon," said Andor. He wondered if Irina knew how angry her father would be. The king looked out. Of course, there was no sign of Irina. She had left long ago on Adriel, a procession of wolves following her across the plains and into the forest. Harman turned to Chloe. "Well, what do we do? Do I find her, force her home and kill the wolves? Or do we give our blessing to her mission?" "And pray," added Julene, who was standing with Mihaela by her mother. Her father glared at her. "Today might have been a very different day if Irina hadn't saved the army from the wolves," said Chloe. The Queen had spent an awful night imagining what might have happened had Vilmos been victorious. "She deserves our respect. There's something deeper in what she does." "What do you mean? Explain this deeper thing to me." "The priestesses of the Dunsong taught me to believe in the unseen world. There's more to life than what the eye beholds." "So what?" said Harman impatiently. He was sceptical of the other world, known to his ancestors as the realm of the Shining One. "Think of Irina's unusual life," said Chloe slowly. "Jan's had a hand in it, leading to yesterday's miracle. I want her home, but my heart tells me she must go." When King Nicholas was well enough, Andor brought him and Razel to Ragnar in a carriage. Andor had been ruling Pavel in his father's absence and was looking forward to the king's return. He found his father much changed. He seemed to have lost almost half his bulk, and his once healthy red cheeks were pale. "He's made good progress," said Razel, as the three of them sat together in the carriage. "Thank you for nursing him," said Andor, reaching over to touch the old woman's hand. "I too am grateful," said Nicholas. "I've learned much from you in these past weeks." "It's always been the privilege of the holy women to tend the royal family," said Razel, smiling. They were on their way to Ragnar Castle to celebrate the autumn harvest festival, even though it was the very cusp of winter, and the ground was already hard with frost. From the castle came the sound of drums, and pumpkin lanterns swung from the branches of odin trees around the stone walls. Inside, Nicholas and Razel were given places of honour at the high table of King Harman, along with Andor. The princesses had decorated the hall with red cloths and wreaths of autumn leaves. Harman had provided a grand feast with huge plates piled high with harvest vegetables, fish from Ralston cooked on hot plates on the open flames. Dozens of loaves of crisp-edged bread with soft insides sat next to apple pies, golden pears nestled in baskets, and stone jugs filled with cream. The children sang and danced, the adults laughed and chatted. Fragments of the Irina story flew around the room. When the last crust of bread had been eaten and the last beverage had been drunk, King Harman rose. Those who had been sitting stood, those who had been dancing still. "Friends of Ragnar," said Harman, "we give thanks for the food you have harvested from the earth. Most of all, we give thanks that the battle against Vilmos was won by the extraordinary deed of Irina. Let us remember those who lost their lives. We will support their families always, because they made the greatest sacrifice of all. They died so the rest of us could live." After a moment of silence, Harman continued, "Not long ago we celebrated Irina's return. Now she has left again. She believes she can restore those wolves to their true selves. I wanted those wolves dead. To my thinking, there was nothing else to do." The king paused again. He knew many of the people would feel as he did. He could see it on their faces. It was up to him to defend Irina. "There is more to us than just thinking," he said. When we strive to do what logic tells us can't be done, that is when we become more deeply human. That is when we think from the heart." The king looked around the hall at his friends, his family, and his subjects. His eyes rested on Nicholas. How good it was that his friend had lived. There was old Razel, who had been right after all, Chloe with her quiet knowledge that he somehow didn't understand, and his beautiful daughters. There was young Andor with his open, clear face, listening intently to his every word. And then King Harman did something he had never done before. "Dear friends," he said, "join hands with me. Let us send our love to Irina. One day we may learn that she received it." Deep in the forest, in the wolves' winter den, Irina sat wrapped in a woolen blanket. The wolves slept. Some were beside her, many more were outside, huddled together for warmth. Irina had fed them each a drop of Razel's healing tonic. She had sung to them, she had named them, made each one of them dear to her. Her eyes were full of wolf bodies, of moonlight and shadows. Beside Durell she fell asleep. She dreamed of Ragnar. Her sisters danced. She witnessed love on the faces of Harman and Chloe, of Razel, of Octavia, William and Andor, and even the unknown king who saved her wolf brother. But there was someone else, a woman Irina had never seen before, wearing hundreds of keys on chains. "Choose the key," said Chloe. "Choose the key." Irina reached forward to touch a tiny, glinting golden key on the woman's neck. It burned her fingers. She woke. She was still there in the company of the wolves, their fur made silver by the moonlight coming through the mouth of the cave. "I am alone, and I am not alone," Irina whispered, and smiled to herself in the darkness.